So, Mr. Mark Anderson from American Free Press here at Copenhagen at the Bilderberg 2014.
Yes.
Yes.
Here we go again.
Here we go again. What do you have to say about the event?
Well, here I am covering Bilderberg for the 5th time, and what I have to say above all is we need to seek solutions, and this thing should have the book closed on it. It should end.
It should end.
The goal should be to stop private, collusive governance. The very ideal of government speaks against this kind of governance.
Yeah.
This is the very antithesis of proper, good government.
Okay. And about the state corporation included and the private corporation included, is it get a certain mix? Do you think it's a democratic issue or?
Well, when you have corporations the way they do now, having so much power, people talk about the 99% versus the 1%. In reality, it's almost like the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. You have probably the greatest concentration of wealth in the fewest hands in the history of the human race right now.
Yeah.
Bilderberg is emblematic of that. The idea that only 140, 150 people can pull enough levers and pull enough strings through their connections, through their wealth, through their influence, through their market share, to kind of control the general direction of the globe. Maybe not every blade of grass, but the general framework of, in the way the matrix, if you will, operates. Yeah. And so there you have it. I mean, if anything could be more undemocratic than that, I'd like to see what it is.
Yeah. It's more or less like a power monopoly, or?
Oh, absolutely. And they bring together just the right kinds of things. You know, the big pharmaceuticals, the big banks, the communications is a big thing.
Okay.
Eric Schmidt of Google being an attendee at Bilderberg now, including this year for the last 5-6 years. And they're the young kids on the block. Bilderberg has the old core group, the Rockefellers of the world, the Rothschilds, the Kissingers of the world. They bring in the new guys. Those guys can't live forever, even though some claim they live off the organ racket, the human organ transplant racket. You know, that's kind of a somewhat humorous but actually plausible theory. Yeah. To add a little humor to the conversation, but the younger guys come in and they provide all the technical expertise, the cyber attacks, the cyber security issues, and that enables the Bilderberg hierarchy and the transgenerational system to go on. As the old guard dies, the Eric Schmidts of the world assume the mantle.
You mentioned communications and the Intel part of it. Can you perhaps say something about it? Yeah,
the Intel part, I'll hold up this reduced page from American Free Press that I made into a flyer, Bilderberg Probed. This has been handed out by the dozen here in Copenhagen for 2014. What it refers to is that I worked with a gutsy former congressman from the United States, Jim Traficant from Ohio. And Jim is not shy, okay? Big time, not shy. Right. Matter of fact, he was so unshy in Congress that they ran him out on a rail and put him in prison for 7 years to cool his heels. That's how Congress treats their outspoken, truthful members.
In a democratic way.
Yeah, in a very democratic way, of course. But he brought it up to me. I had thought of some angles on this, but he brought it up. He said, what if I'm a congressman or senator, I'm on the Intelligence Committee, and I go to Bilderberg, I know some state secrets, some sensitive classified material about the United States. I get a couple drinks in me, and I divulge things to fellow Bilderberg members that I have been entrusted by the public not to divulge, insomuch as I've been entrusted by the public to even be their congressman, and I took an oath to the U.S. Constitution. Am I then to, because I like my Bilderberg buddies, hey, they're part of the Royal Rugby Club, they're part of my Masonic handshake, towel-flicking group, that I can just tell them things that I shouldn't tell them? And who knows who's among them and what their real connections might be, regardless of their titles? And the answer to that, Mr. Traficant says, is, you know, is a very curious thing. In other words, Bilderberg should be avoided by elected officials and even appointed officials because they take an oath to the public, and by definition, that precludes this kind of meeting because they don't know what they might say that might be misconstrued, or it might be sensitive information divulged improperly.
Yeah.
And Bilderberg screens its own members, but hey, they're not omnipotent. They're going to miss something. They're not going to know everything about everyone all the time. And they're bringing in new people that they're screening, even as the old guard kind of stays watch. So you have this collusion of all these different people running the levers, the different levers of the matrix, and you have this risk of this leakage of sensitive classified information. And that's not even counting the deal making. Let's face it, you know, oh really, you've got this antitrust law and you're a banker. Mr. Congressman, this antitrust law that your Congress is considering, I just don't like it anymore. And so or you're the banker, you're telling me this, and I, the congressman, say, well, you know, maybe I can get the committee to drop that proposal to reinstall Glass-Steagall, for example. You know, and so there's deal making and wheeling dealing, and we expect that. But at Bilderberg, you have not wheeling and dealing like within one national Congress, normal corruption. You have wheeling and dealing with this supranational Congress. Supranationalism, of course, is a political term meaning beyond the nation state. And so supranational means beyond the nation state's interests, which means this is like a unofficial Senate here, this Bilderberg group, making these collusive decisions amongst each other, divorced from their national interest, to which many of them take an oath as appointed.
Like a global Senate.
Like a global Senate. And the Trilateral Commission, ironically, has almost the exact same number of people as the U.S. House of Representatives.
That's a coincidence.
Well, maybe not, excuse me, maybe yes, maybe no. But what's interesting, this is just a side note for Danish viewers, is Bo Lidegaard, the editor-in-chief of Politiken. Yeah, the big newspaper here. Now, there's rumors that he's at Bilderberg now for 2014, but he definitely is on the Trilateral Commission, the Brethren group formed in 1973 by David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski. Brzezinski was in the Carter government, and that group has 400 and some members at large, but only 60 members in its executive committee. And who is the only known media rep on the executive committee of the Trilateral Commission? None other than Bo Lidegaard.
Yeah.
So the likelihood that he's at Trilateral is quite high.
Yeah.
Now, journalists like myself aren't elected or appointed government officials, but there's a presumption of public trust.
Yeah.
There's a presumption that you're there and you do what you do in the public interest.
Yeah.
And you may be privately owned, you may be government subsidized like a state-run media, but whether you are or not privately or publicly funded, there's just an assumption by the public that you're looking out for them.
Yeah.
So I called Lidegaard's office this morning, May 30, and one secretary had no idea where he was, but he wasn't in.
No.
And, you know, a mile away lies the Bilderberg meeting at the Marriott. And so there'll be more calls, you know, more inquisitions as to where he was today, and then and so on and so forth. But the Trilateral Connection, an American-based group having the only journalist on its executive committee being this Danish editor, is quite curious.
Maybe a few words about the composition of the group, then.
The Bilderberg group?
Yeah. Who gets into it and why?
Well, it was started, I think a little history is instructive. It was started by Prince Bernhard, the Netherlands royalty. Now, he was alleged to have had these Nazi connections, but he worked with the Jesuit-linked Joseph Redinger.
Yeah.
Now, we know Redinger was part of it because a very honest congressman, which is a rarity in America, it's like seeing a unicorn, right? John Rarick from Louisiana, in the congressional record, he's the late John Rarick now, he had it in there about Redinger, who wanted a united Europe in the wake of World War II, having worked with Bernhard. A lot of people say Bernhard was the whole power behind Bilderberg. He was not. Okay. And then they had Jean-Claude Monet, the father of Europe, you know, the European coal and steel community. They wanted this common market, as they called it. And they might have had a reason right after World War II, after all that, the convulsions and the destruction, to say, hey, wait a minute, we got to do something here. I understand that, but now we're, in 2014, we're 60 years into it. It's their 62nd meeting, because in the early days they met more than once a year at first. And now, you know, they're going on this long. They're not cleaning up after World War II anymore.
No.
You know, and so they're picking people now. Again, back then, they were looking for people that were getting us past World War II and into the post-World War II years. The Cold War comes along, and they begin. Okay, back up a little bit. In the waning days of World War II, they already created the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization, and the GATT, everything. This whole post-World War II global infrastructure is put into place. So they're not just saying, my God, what a terrible war, let's clean up the mess. They're completely reconstructing the world order. And some people would say that World War II was contrived, at least in part, for that very reason. FDR knew, K-N-E-W, knew the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor. Absolutely, positively knew. It was set up that way so 3,000 guys would die in their underwear. Terrible thing. Japan, you know, the trade embargo, they were more or less kind of elbowed or slapped in the face into this thing. I'm not excusing Japan. I'm not excusing any of the belligerents, but people do have their reasons.
For sure.
You know, you slap them in the face one too many times, they're going to slap back. You know, and so then fast forward through history, and the Bilderberg Group is clearly hiring people that will take that post-World War II infrastructure and fine-tune it and make it work. When was NATO formed? 1949. Now, there are even commentators that say the Bilderberg Group is a creation of NATO. Do I believe that? I don't know enough about it in that regard to know whether that's true. The timing is right. NATO 49, Bilderberg 54. Does that mean the correlation is causation? I don't know. NATO is more powerful than people realize. It's of course its mission evolved. In the 90s, they began an aggressive bombing campaign in Serbia, Yugoslavia, where schools and bridges were bombed, and media stations broadcasting against the NATO attack were directly bombed, and the people were killed. And NATO either evolved into this aggressive thing or was showing its true face and what it was all along, you know. Or we're opposing the Warsaw Pact. Well, you know, a lot of people even consider the Cold War to have been something of a contrivance. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis, a dialectic. You know, play the East and West off each other to create something else. And people even wonder about that now. Is the EU and Russian battle some sort of dialectic? There's no way of knowing yet. The operative word being yet. For sure. But you know, so here we have this post-World War II infrastructure that's now what we see. NATO, the World Trade Organization, huge trade deals. The world divided up into North American Union, European Union, Pacific Union, which is going to become the Trans-Pacific Partnership, excuse me. Transatlantic is the EU-US trade deal. And all these building blocks of this post-World War II global order are put into place. But let's face it, this is not an easy thing to do. Even for these great minds in Bilderberg and Trilateral, it's a transgenerational Herculean effort. It requires billions of dollars and constant propaganda to make it happen. And that's part of what they're about, to set up the system, maintain the system, have the think tanks like Brookings Institution that's at Trilateral and Bilderberg all the time, have them do the heavy intellectual lifting, think it through, publish the reports, publish the approaches, the tactics, put the tactics into place, buy off the media, especially those that attend these high-level meetings, and just keep turning the wheel. If they stop turning the wheel, it's over.
Sure. They got to expand.
Expand and keep it moving. Keep the deception going.
Exactly.
And it's infuriating to the average citizen's point of view, because, you know, we're grown up with this almost childlike, you know, they should be honest and you know, everything should be wonderful or at least tolerable. But you know, the human soul has a dark underbelly, unfortunately, and they're seduced. You almost have to pity them as much as you oppose them.
So, about the strongest tool, for the power, let's have a word about it.
The strongest tool that they have?
The thing that creates it all.
Is the control of the monetary system. Okay. Here's a good way of explaining it. There's 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. But actually there's 4. The power of the sovereign should include the creation of the monetary unit. In the U.S. Congress and the Constitution, it was Congress shall coin money and regulate the value thereof. Not the bankers, not the Federal Reserve, not Paul Warburg, Congress. Now, Congress is supposed to mean the people. It's supposed to be synonymous with the people, just like your parliament in Sweden.
Yeah.
To say parliament is almost as if to say the people and their representatives. But when you hand over the creation of money to a private entity, what they're actually doing is selling you money. Now, money's supposed to be used to buy things, but
Yeah.
you're not supposed to buy money from somebody. That
No.
is really stupid.
That is stupid.
Right, so you're the government, right?
Yeah,
So here's your
okay.
bonds.
Okay.
I'm the banker, here's my money.
Okay.
And I say, you want money, don't you? And you say,
Yes, I want money.
and I say, now there's a few markets and there's a little bit in between us, like the investment banks like Goldman Sachs that go to auctions for government bonds.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is a slightly simplified version that you're
Yeah.
probably familiar with. But in order for you to have any money at all, for anybody in your country to eat a meal, unless they're eating it right out of the garden, you have to hand over the bonds and securities. Only then do you get your money.
Okay.
Ooh, but you owe me interest. You have to redeem the bonds. Now, how are you
Yeah.
going to do that? You're going to tax him. These are your citizens. You're going to tax them all forever
Yeah.
and ever and ever. You can't even say forever enough times. It's a transgenerational, permanent idea that interest must flow, you must pay it, and they'll be taxed to do it. No
Yeah.
questions asked.
No.
If you ask questions, we're going to call in the IMF, we're going to enact austerity measures on you, and you're going to get less of this from me, but I'm going to get more debt from you, and all their salaries are going to be cut, especially if they work for you, the government.
Yeah.
And you're going to be squeezed down to where you're crying uncle. And then meanwhile at Bilderberg and Trilateral, they're going to talk about this and how do we get them to cry uncle? How do we get them to squawk,
Yeah.
I was at a meeting of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs once. This is it's kind of subcommittee of these larger groups. And some of their meetings have to be open to the public because they have a tax exempt status.
Yeah.
So by law, they have some forums open to the public.
Yeah.
I always sit in the back seat.
Yeah.
And this guy literally said, how are we going to give the Greeks a haircut, quote unquote?
Oops.
Yeah, getting a little candid, aren't we, right?
Yeah.
So what he meant was, how short can we cut their hair before they complain?
Yeah.
In other words, how tight do the austerity measures have to be? How much debt money can we get them? Because after all, they need money to run. They're begging. They're down. You kick them while they're down.
Yeah.
You cut their hair while they're down. So they'll settle for the most unagreeable conditions just to get money. Now you as the government could say, now Mr. Banker, I don't need you anymore.
No.
I'm going to keep my money, as a matter of fact, or my bonds. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to print bonds anymore.
No.
I'm going to print my own money. There's going to be no interest because there's no borrowing. And I go, oh no, you're not, and I assassinate you or your finance minister. You see, this is how it works, and so it's a money mafia, and you're buying money from me when you could create it on your own. Now, what you make the money out of, whether you have a gold standard, whether you don't, whether it's like a greenbacker thing, is your sovereign decision, not mine, the banker.
Oh.
I'm only supposed to process the money that you put into circulation. Now, you break that and you break them.
Yeah.
But they guard that. Through the propaganda, through the media, they mystify money. You're not supposed to understand how money comes into existence. You're not supposed to understand anything except you don't have enough of it.
And you need us.
And you need us. Now, the people look to the government thinking, well, Federal Reserve note, it must be government because it says federal. All it is a contractual relationship.
Yeah.
They're a money mafia, and the government's buying money off them through bonds and through the bond market. That's the part that's a little more complex. But anyway, that's the key to the power. You take that away, and you've literally removed the transmission out of their engine.
Yeah.
And that's why they mystify money. That's why they don't want people to understand how money works. And I'm not saying I understand it all. For 300 years since the formation of the Bank of England, 1694, and the City of London, which formed it, runs England, not the other way around. And British politicians admit that all the time. Well,
Yeah.
if the damn city didn't run everything, the square mile, as they call it, and in our country, the square mile is the Federal Reserve Bank of New York.
Yeah.
the most powerful of the 12 branches.
Yeah.
But it's 12 branches of one big thick tree. It's not 12 independent branches.
No.
And so, you know, that being said, but this is the thing. This is the key to the whole whole issue.
Yeah.
If that gets out, then they're done.
They're gone. They're gone.
Yeah.
By the minute.
Right. And so I think, although I don't know how long the interview should be, and you can ask whatever questions, but that's the part I want to get out there above
Yeah.
all, is take the money control from them, and you've got them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, not that they wouldn't have some contingencies up their sleeve, you know, and I don't want to make accusations, but up to and including rather rough play.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
starting wars,
Starting wars, yes.
Yeah.
Like Ukraine, or by
Yeah.
a coincidence, IMF runs up the stage.
yeah, right before, well, recent history, Yanukovych is, he says, forced out, he flees.
Yeah.
A pro-IMF, pro-EU, pro-NATO interim government, they call themselves an interim
Yeah.
government, that's pretty generous,
Yeah.
comes in, led by these pro-Westerners, and an IMF plan apparently is, like Greece, going to give the Ukrainians a haircut.
Yeah.
And now we have the central government in Kiev, apparently it's them, attacking their own people
Yes.
because of their pro-Russian leanings,
Yes.
evidently.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there can be things we don't know,
Yeah.
but it doesn't look good, and I think this is one of their tools, is to have revolution and false uprisings and all sorts of bloodshed to get people's minds off of
The main issue by the money.
the main issue by money and who the real villains are.
Yeah.
You know, they paint black white and white black. So it's a rather grueling subject to tackle, what we're talking
Yeah.
about. You know,
It's been around for a while.
it's been around, but the Bank of England connection, basically we're in a 300-year cycle of
Yeah.
monetary control.
Yeah, for sure.
Is what I was getting at. And the key is to break the cycle, and the key to that, of course, is education.
Yeah.
People can't act unless they have a proper prognosis, a proper idea of what's wrong. You can't fix something unless you know what's wrong. The only thing is we have to avoid inertia to where we know what's wrong, but then we never act on it. The wheel just spins, but there's
on
no
and on
traction.
and on.
And that's we run that risk when we have a lot of protesting without a purpose.
Yeah.
Granted, we don't always agree on what the problem is, and some protesting is necessary to raise people's awareness. But once you raise their awareness, you've got to give a
Certain direction.
right, and that ties into what I think I'll summarize this discussion with, and that's, I know a really smart guy in Michigan named Ron Fink.
Yeah.
He's a wise person. And he says you have the problem set, you have the solution set,
Yeah.
and the problem set is just all that's wrong, typified by Bilderberg, typified by the Trilateral Commission. To some extent, people like the Atlantic Council, you know, different groups, Council on Foreign Relations, and so on. And we know about them. We know they're problematic. We know there are a lot of rogue characters. And we know that it shouldn't be that way, but it is, at least for now. But the solution set is where you begin to develop systems. You don't so much as unelect a bad guy or elect a good guy.
No.
I mean, you do that because it's necessary. Or you can be like the Swiss, where you vote more on initiatives and you kind of construct the government according to popular vote and not so much on what politicians decide. The Swiss have something there that I think could be parlayed around and shared.
In the future.
Yeah, maybe modified.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the monopolists that Bilderberg represents want to control water, a basic human need. Food, agriculture, they always want large corporate GMO farming.
Yeah.
So you begin to spin the wheel the other way by Detroit having community gardens where they don't depend on distant corporate food makers and food processors.
Okay.
Natural cures to our illnesses, get away from the pharmaceutical racket. One way you disarm the pharmaceutical racket, which is represented at Bilderberg, is you don't take pharmaceutical drugs.
Yeah.
Your consumption patterns matter. How you spend your money matters.
Yeah.
It's not just protesting. It's not just good laws, good cop, bad cop. It's how you live your life and how you live in such a way where it no longer patronizes their system.
Yeah.
They still depend on us buying their products.
Yeah.
So you have to think about it holistically and not just say, I'm going to oppose that law, I'm going to support that law, or politician or candidate.
See it as a whole.
It's a whole, you know, and right now, I mean, it's getting close to where a lot of people, a lot more people I know, will never take a pharmaceutical drug ever again.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. And there's some things you cannot patent, and there's a lot of cures for diseases that we're told can't be cured. Yeah. There's Tesla-free energy, which sounds fantastic to some people, but the potential and the proof of it being there is already there. It's just a matter of development.
Yeah.
Where you could have widespread electricity without a integrated grid. The electrical grid cuts both ways. One storm can knock out power for hundreds of thousands. Do we really want a system like that?
Nope.
Even the building codes. We have things like the monolithic dome, a new kind of structure that can withstand an F5 tornado that are designed to last 500 or 1,000 years. Why are we not building these all over? Why are not all our schools? Because of the insurance racket. Insurance monetizes risk.
Yeah.
In order to have that racket, you have to have risk of death and injury literally institutionalized.
Yeah.
You have to institutionalize risk, so you can't be building homes that can't be blown down or can't
last forever.
Yeah, you can't be doing that. You have to have planned obsolescence. So we're put in stick-built homes, we're put in substandard housing, and I'm not calling for some big socialist manifesto. But what I am saying is we've got to know how to build a system that's good and is contrary to theirs. Not just contrary to theirs just for the sake of opposing them, but because it's better.
Yeah.
And it's all right in front of us.
Yeah.
From housing to water to food to energy and then the money system. Even local currencies can help as a transition or as a stopgap measure at the very least. So, you know, you've got solutions, but they want you to keep buying from the same producers, so to speak, you know. Always take your, you know, if you're sick, go see your doctor, get that prescription.
Yeah.
You know, and the media all is loaded to present that system, the system we have, as being almost sacred. You know, you don't run against the matrix is good.
It's like religion.
Yeah, and fortunately, a lot of the rebellion against the establishment is coming in the form of that. I know a lot of people that are now, one by one, they're unplugging. No more fluoridated water, no more GMO foods, no more fast food.
No more sugar.
It could be that. It can be anything. And they're unplugging. And, you know, that's going to make the globalists panic more than anything, is they're not buying our stuff anymore. They need the public. Here's another reassuring note. If they didn't fear public opinion, if public opinion meant nothing to them, they wouldn't go so far out of their way to deceive us.
No.
They deceive us because they fear us.
Yeah.
You only deceive that whom you fear.
Yeah.
They don't want you to know because they fear what happens when you do. Yeah. See? So we've got them. Yeah. We've just got to know when
to push it. Yeah.
You know, and I would imagine that part of what they do is, well, it would have to be. They're not going to come every year here and talk about totally fresh topics. They're going to go, wait a minute, what we talked about last year, how's that going?
Yeah.
They've got to recap a little bit. How are we doing since last year?
Make it interconnect.
Yeah, right. Otherwise, every meeting is a flash in the pan. 50 first dates, nobody remembers what happened on the first date. And so, you know, you've got that to look at. The fact that they've got to assess, like some of their topics on their official website is, you know, populism in Europe. You know, what that really means is kind of like, what are we going to do about these rebels? Yeah. You know, or these naysayers, these malcontents. Yeah. You know, and so, you know, but it all comes down to the fact that they fear an aroused, informed, dedicated, unified public opinion. Yeah. So they scatter our brains every which way, left wing, right wing, all these parties, all these red state, blue state in the United States. It doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. It means less than nothing. Yeah. You know, a little bit on the local level, at the state and local level, a Democrat and Republican might have some genuine differences, but you get to the national level is what I mean. It means nothing. It's just to make people think each other is the problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could go on, but, you know, I think the solutions are at hand. The problem is obvious, but we can't only talk about the problem.
Education is the solution.
It's the main part of the solution, but
Yeah.
you can know something and still not act on it.
No.
You know, you can know a great candidate and still not vote for him. You can know why GMO is bad for you, but still keep eating it.
Yeah.
You know, and then you wonder why you're getting cancer, you know, and or whatever the case might be. So, I mean, I hope we've come full circle in this discussion today
Yeah.
here during Bilderberg 2014. They're meeting as we speak, as
Yeah.
you mentioned. This is day 2, May 30. They finish up June 1st, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a turning point in a lot of ways. The populist elections that just happened in late May, a lot of the anti-EU, anti-Brussels sentiment. What I want to get out there is that this sentiment, this view, this blowback against the EU needs to mention Bilderberg. Bilderberg needs to be put into the discussion.
Yeah.
And I call on Nigel Farage and Marie Le Pen to insert that into the discussion, and anyone else that cares to do so, whatever their level in society.
Yeah.
To show that to oppose the EU enlargement and consolidation is to oppose Bilderberg, because that enlargement and consolidation is one and the same.
Yeah.
Whatever disagreements over details they may have.
Yeah.
And, you know,
It's a big issue.
it's a huge issue right now, but it goes all the way back to Prince Bernhard, Joseph
Yeah.
Redinger, post-World War II, and everything we've discussed today. So
So.
perhaps that is a good place to wind up.
Yeah.
Any other
It's good.
questions?
No,
or?
it's okay. So we thank you, Mark Anderson, for a good contribution to the education of the people.
Good, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
And live on, Jim Tucker.
Yeah,
In the spirit
okay.
of Jim Tucker.
Yeah.